Which team were you in?
I was on engineering.
Do you know how many?
I don't know. I know my.
Okay, should we talk about Rahul? I probably got familiar with him when most people did, which was during his stint as Rahul Ligma. I also have a teenage son, and so the whole Ligma thing was just fantastic. My son went around Disneyland for an entire day wearing those like birthday pins that said Mr. Ligma on it. And so I had the added benefit of having seen an entire amusement park respond to the idea of Mr. Ligma, and had no idea that he was not an actual Twitter employee, but was also, at the time, a founder struggling to find an idea that could break them out of this cycle of non-product market fit. And then a while back, he messaged me that he had suddenly found Indie too, and we had gone back and forth on his journey with Julius, the decisions that he was making, and the new intense thoughts and feelings he was having about fundraising and the impact that it was having on his business, and kind of what felt right versus what he was being told to do. And so we've just had this great back and forth. Some of the ideas that he's working through, some of the experiences he's had as a founder in, you know, what I would call kind of the post-AI world, how that's influenced him from his journey as, you know, starting as an intern at Facebook, going on to work at Uber, and now working on startups kind of pre and post-AI. It's really fun to kind of get into his experience through living and building at a time where all that technology was coming online and the unlocks that it created. I hope everyone takes as much from it as I did. Identifying as a hacker, I think, is actually quite interesting.
Yeah.
And especially kind of hacker as leader now.
Yeah.
Like, how is that evolution of growing from like individual contributor to leadership over this team, feeling like, because you're what, how many people now? 5, 6?
We're 9.
Dude.
Yeah, we doubled.
You've almost doubled.
Yeah. We doubled, but we didn't double the burn. It's we actually lowered the burn. We're hiring opportunistically now.
Yeah.
It's like there's a few things we do want to hire for. One of the big things in the company is DIY. Like you can basically do anything. You know, instead of following the best practice for something, you can really figure a thing out with first principles and trying things. You do something and you realize you did it wrong, but you learn something from it. And then you do it again. Eventually, with a few tries, you figure out how the thing works. And that's usually much better than like calling in an expert and getting the expert to tell you what to do. And, in general, I think I don't want to talk about YC. I went through YC.
Okay. For Julius or no?
For Julius.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
It wasn't Julius back then. It was a different idea.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, and then we went through 6 pivots.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Same corporate container, same company.
Yeah.
6 different.
Yeah. We were just, launching things.
Didn't you had another startup before this too, no?
Back in college, yeah.
Okay.
And
why don't you want to talk about YC?
Oh, I can talk about YC, but the thing I'm about to say, I don't want to call out YC for it, which is YC, they have all this great advice, but I know some founder friends that followed all the advice to the T and ended up being very mediocre and very frustrated with the outcome. I feel like startups are a game of outliers. If you follow all the best practices, you raise money and then you hire a team. And then you want to do sales, you hire an AE or you hire a head of sales and you hire a head of growth. You just follow all the advice and you just end up average. The advice is there to protect you from downside. It's rarely is there to give you a lot of upside. And if startups are a game of outliers, you kind of just have to do your thing. Linear is they're what, cash flow positive.
And you saw in that video with Kari, every step of the way, people are you're doing it wrong. Every decision they made that ultimately ended up contributing to their success was completely counter to the conventional wisdom at the time.
Yeah.
Which I found so interesting.
It's really fascinating.
But unsurprising too, right?
Yeah, it's really fascinating. A company like that. I really find it fascinating that Linear has very little AI stuff. and rarely like do like, hey guys, we ship 12 features in 12 days. You see companies do that. They just want to ship for the sake of shipping. We aren't full linear, but we aren't full like 12 features in 12 days. I think companies have to eventually find their own identity. And I think companies get made by the advice they ignore as much as, by the advice that they do follow.
So how have you found your identity with Julius? Was it through that series of failed experiments to start, those 6 different pivots, or has it been more?
It was like pretty much mirroring my identity, which is, trying things. We tried 6 things, and then Julius happened. And from each thing we tried, we got more informed on what should we try next. And as we got more informed, we, tried the next thing with more conviction and more learnings from the last time, and with a lot of open mind. I think the path to PMF is very chaotic. So you can't follow like a series of steps and get to PMF. You really have to maximize exposure.
That has to be so frustrating though, especially as a young entrepreneur who's working on your second thing. You've done all the right things. You've gone through, you've raised from the right people, and it's the first thing doesn't work exactly the way you thought it would work.
Yeah, the first one is always the toughest. So I tell this to my founder friends all the time. Every founder I meet, and they're frustrated. The thing that they tried first time doesn't work. And it's usually founders that are technical. They go into the thing thinking, how hard can it be to build software? It's a simple React application. I could just build the UI and just, use some database, my domain name, and I'll have paying users. How hard can it be? And the first reality check is there's so much more to building great products than simply like writing code. Writing code is a big part of it, but you have to try things. You have to talk to users. You have to position your product. You have to be able to talk about your product, articulate the problem it solves, and why a user should use it, to figure out distribution, and those things take time. And those are the intangibles that go into making a product successful. So oftentimes you'll see, technical founders, they go into the thing thinking, how hard can it be? And then there are 6 months.
We didn't do it because it was easy. We did it because we thought it would be easy.
Exactly. You meet these founders, they're kind of like 6 months into building their idea, and they're frustrated. They know they want to give up, but they have basically told everybody that I'm working on this one idea. I've raised money. You have told your investors, you have told your former colleagues, you have told your friends, told your family, and then there's all these expectations, and it's really hard to give up then.
Oh, that's interesting, because now your identity is tied to that initial problem.
Yeah.
And anything that's not that feels like a failure.
Exactly.
Oh, that's interesting.
I always tell them, guys, the first one it's hardest to give up. Even though you've given up mentally, it'll be really hard for you to give up because you've told all these people.
Is there anything people have done? Is there a common personality type that handles it better than others, or that sees it sooner than others?
I think it's kind of like a rite of passage.
I love that.
Even with the founders that do it really well, they handle that really well, they've usually started a thing in high school or in college, and have kind of gone through that in the past and have kind of earned it. So either you do it later when you actually start a real fully established company, or when you start like a business in high school or college.
Earlier you talked about hacking as an identity, but one of the lessons you shared was that I thought was interesting, and that idea of kind of lowering the stakes a bit, doing it for the fun of it, the exploration of it.
Yeah.
And yet part of what you're saying here too is like the minute like you commit to an idea and you raise money for it, the stakes go through the roof in maybe a relatively unproductive way.
Yeah, I think so. It's important to have fun. If you're not having fun, like why are you even doing this?
Right.
Startups are stressful. There's a lot of adrenaline, a lot of dopamine.
A lot of caffeine.
A lot of caffeine, all of that. But if you're not having fun at the end of the day, like why even do that thing? So I think you should always have fun, even when it gets hard. The way to overcome the stakes getting high is to fail early and fail fast. Like, be wrong. Once you're wrong once, it frees you up to be wrong again, and then you're free. You can actually fully explore, find the truth. So if you're worried about being wrong, you will never really like be able to pursue truth, because you always want to like not say the wrong thing.
What's that learning curve like for somebody coming into Julius, or even for you personally, to like, that's a very different kind of environment than probably most people are used to working in.
Yeah, there's no penalty for being wrong. There's penalty for like not taking shots. You know, take a lot of shots, try a bunch of things, and what works, double down, make it work. There's no penalty for being wrong. The people we have hired, some of them have worked at companies where you don't want to say the wrong thing, or you don't want to have the wrong idea. You really have to get them to unlearn that culture and open them up to exploration.
When did you start to internalize this as a company and culture?
It's something I internalized as an individual, and it took me a while, but to realize that the company is like a reflection of who I am. And I think that's just true for all companies. You look at Ivan from Notion, and that Notion is a reflection of who Ivan is. Or Kari, you know, Linear is a reflection of who Kari is. That's just how it ends up being. You end up building a company that reflects you. First thing was internalizing that's who I am. And freeing myself up to exploration, trying things, building things, launching them. As more people joined us, you know, people would ask me, hey, Rahul, what's the plan? So like, what are we doing next? And I would say, I don't know, man, like, let's try this thing. This is what my high level idea is. I think this is why we should do this. Is it going to succeed? I'm not sure, but let's build something. Let's put it into the hands of users. Let's see what happens. You do need to have a long-term direction that you want to build towards. And for us, that was AI models are going to get better. They're starting to write code that's already helping engineers be more productive, and is going to be even more helpful for people that are non-technical, because they now have this AI programmer in their pocket. But what will it help them with? That wasn't clear. And the reason you need to have some direction is so that your learnings can compound. You know, if your first idea is accounting software for bar managers, and the second idea is like fitness app for athletes, like there's not going to be learnings that compound.
Are there ideas today that you have to shut down before they make it? You're talking about like pursuing any and all ideas that kind of move you forward.
Yes.
But are there things that people want to try where you're just either you're immediately like no, or you've been surprised at how well they've worked?
There's things that are core focuses for the company, and I think that's important because you can be exploring in all directions at all times. So what you do need to do is have a clear focus for the company, that this is what we care about, and then freeing yourself up to like hacking on ideas with that.
Interestingly, you've mentioned Notion and Linear twice, and that was actually kind of how we connected. I think you DM'd me or I DM'd you about something, and then it kind of spiraled into seeing, you know, the indie website and what was resonating with you and what wasn't. What about those two companies speaks to you?
I am a big fan of both products as a user. They're great products. And I'm also a fan of how both of these founders have built their companies. I actually cold emailed Ivan at Notion back in 2018 when we were 6 people.
Oh, wow.
For an internship.
Yeah.
And he rejected me. He told me I'm too green, but I made it out to San Francisco and we kept in touch. We still exchange notes sometimes. And I really look up to how he's built a company. It's a very special company.
Yeah.
You know,
What do you see as special about it?
So as a user, what's fascinating to me is you would think software needs to be very simple and self-explanatory. But what's fascinating about Notion is it's the first piece of software where people invest a lot of time into learning it. You'll find YouTube videos of people doing an hour-long tutorial on how to use Notion. And you can think about,
so fascinating, yeah.
Shouldn't this be simpler? Shouldn't software not need to be taught? Like, do you ever need to be taught how to use Instagram or how to use Twitter? Like, it's This is how it is. And that's like one of the things that they're very contrarian about is they have this really powerful software. And to me, that was really fascinating as a user. Number two is how they build and grew the team. And these are the stories I've heard from people that talked to Ivan and the founders. There was a point at which they were offered a lot of money, but they turned it down because the bottleneck for them to grow the company wasn't money, it was the culture. So rarely do you see a company say no to more money because the bottleneck is not money, it's the culture.
Yeah.
So rare. Same thing with Linear is, they're a very unique company. They have principles like if you notice a bug, they instantly fix it, but they ship with a lot of craft. I think that's special. I like how Kari has built the company culture, company values. One thing on their job description stood out to me. I was reading through job descriptions because I was trying to write job descriptions for Julius, and I was looking at companies that I look up to and seeing how they describe their roles. And I noticed work-life balance as one of the things that they offer.
Absolutely.
Explicitly.
Yeah.
And you would look at a Series B startup like Linear and you would say, man, you should be like all hands on deck in the office. I don't agree with what about the work-life balance that Kari advocates for fully, but I respect it. I respect the position that he's taking. It's very rare for startups or founders to be contrarian about things that aren't part of the zeitgeist or as hip in the zeitgeist.
Right.
Like, it's special.
Has that surprised you being in Silicon Valley, how much the zeitgeist controls the way people think, talk, and build?
Oh, all the time.
Really?
All the time. There's some like truisms people follow to the T, and I think they kind of like, they don't want to not follow those truisms or not do those things because what if they fail?
Feel like the reason you failed is because you didn't do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. And the thing about startups is that there's always like a million reasons why you would fail. Like that's the point of startups.
Yes, exactly.
That's the point of startups.
Right.
You're gonna fail, man. You're gonna fail. So might as well free yourself up to go do the things that you think are actually important. You can never like protect yourself from the downside risk of like the million reasons why you'd fail.
I love that. You're probably going to fail anyway, so you might as well fail doing exactly what you want to be doing the way you want to be doing it.
Exactly. I love that.
Why is there so much resistance to that?
I think part of it is, I think startups have kind of become like one of the things you do in your career. Like you finish college, you finish Stanford, then you work at a big company for 2 years, and then you go start a startup for a year, and then a year later you wind it down, and you go get a job at another big company, or you go to business school, or you go work at a late-stage startup. Late-stage startups are great because they're pre-IPO. They're about to IPO, so it's easy money. And it's just like a career trajectory that people follow. And I don't think there's something wrong with that. But I think it tends to pollute the pool of people that are actually taking risks and doing it for a mission. You're building a startup, you have a mission, you want to see a thing exist in the world. I think that's very different from following like a set career path.
No, I think that's right. So you talked about being mission driven, and people talk about it a lot, but what does that actually look like in practice for something like Julius, especially Julius, where you've been through multiple iterations of what a potential product / company could end up looking like.
Yeah.
Have that mission stayed the same throughout all the pivoting and iterations?
They've become, over time, they've become more clear. So when we first started, we knew that I'm an engineer, we're engineers. We use tools like GitHub Copilot, and they make us more productive in writing code. But for every one of Rahuls out there, there's a dozen people that aren't programmers, and they want to use the power of code to do useful things. That was the mission early on. We didn't know what those useful things will be and how they will use the power of code. And that was a process. We're discovering that over time. And over time it's become much clearer. It's the useful thing is people have a ton of data on their hands and information and files, and they want to analyze that, visualize it, and get insights from it. And usually it takes them a lot of manual work, or they have to go talk to a data analyst to do that. And Julius, the AI programmer, can just do that for them in seconds. How we get there? We tried, 5 things along those lines. We built and we launched them. We learned from each of those things. They were called all different names. It wasn't called Julius. And then,
what was your favorite name that you had to give up?
Hoops GPT.
Ooh,
Yeah. So we were like,
that is a good one.
can we take play-by-play data from the NBA database? And we got like a $19 NBA pass, and we just like got all the data. And
That's amazing.
and every single play since like 1989.
Yeah.
And what if you could have an AI programmer write SQL to analyze the play-by-play data and give you precise answers? You're a sports fan and you can just do this.
Yeah.
And you have, sports teams have like analysts, and they pay them a lot. And now every sports fan can have this in their pocket. And you could ask a question like, what is LeBron's 3-point percentage against Steph Curry in the fourth quarter when he's trailing by at least 10 points? And that's a very precise question, but you could write a query that complicated and get that answer. It was called Hoops GPT, and we spent a month building it, and we launched it. And it's just bad timing because there were like 3 games left in the season. It was like 4th week of May, NBA Finals.
Not a whole lot too you could bet against, with all your new insider information.
Exactly.
Totally.
And then, a month later, we launched Julius.
How did Hoops GPT lead to Julius?
Well, it was SQL, so the AI was writing code.
Yeah.
It was data, so we were managing a massive amount of data, and you could create visualizations, you could ask questions, you could analyze the data. We had to change it from SQL to Python because Python is way more versatile. And instead of NBA data, you could just bring your own data and you could just ask things. We made those changes and we called it Julius, and we launched it. Your AI assistant that analyzes data. And on the first day we had paying users. You just didn't know.
First day.
We didn't know we had paying users for 2 days because our Stripe API keys in production were actually a test API key, not the real API.
Why did you decide to give people the option to pay day one?
Partly out of frustration of not knowing what users have real feedback versus just, suggestions. So we wanted a way to know if users that are giving us feedback, is this something they truly care about? And if they really cared about it, they would be probably willing to pay for it. And so we put we put up an option to pay. And first day we had paying users. On the 3rd day, we found out we've had paid users for the last 2 days. We just didn't know because our Stripe API keys were the test API keys, weren't the real API keys.
Right.
And then we talked to the users that paid us, and we asked them like, how you guys like using this? What would you want next? And they had all these feature ideas, so we just went into building, and yeah, that's Julius.
That's amazing. How much does user feedback guide the roadmap now?
A good amount. You can't always take user feedback literally. If the users say, I want X, usually you want to ask them why they want X and what problem does it solve for them and how do they do the thing today. Because there's ways you can solve the problem for them without building the exact thing that they asked for. The thing about users is that users are never wrong about the problem. They're always right about the problem. They may be wrong about the solution on how to solve that problem, but they're always right about the problem. And so you want to collect problems from users all the time and use that to guide your product roadmap.
I feel like you're the transition generation in the way that my generation was like the transition to the web. Everyone always was like, oh, you lived before the internet and now you've lived after it. So you're in this like certain class of person, whereas like my kids are post-internet, post-mobile, post-social, post all that stuff. I feel like you've lived through the pre-AI
entrepreneurship experience and the
Yeah.
post-AI entrepreneurship experience. Any observations?
Great question. I'll tell you how that has changed my thinking as a product builder, and maybe I think I can answer how it has changed my thinking as an entrepreneur. As a product builder, one thing you have to know when we are building with AI is that these systems are non-deterministic. You ask them the same question 10 times, and 9 out of 10 times they'll answer one thing, but then 1 out of 10 times they'll answer something else. And how do you build products when the underlying systems are non-deterministic? It's a real challenge. So if you've built products before AI, you kind of have to rethink some other thing in how you build products. But that also opens up the doors to so many more powerful things. Now you have this general purpose interface, this snapshot of the world's knowledge up until a certain cutoff date in the model. And we have certain features that are entirely powered by AI in the backend. So you could click some columns in your data, and the AI will take the click information and start generating visualizations for you before you even ask a question. And that kind of software was nearly impossible to build before, and you can have a lot of fun with it now. So as a product builder, you can have to learn this new way of doing things. As an entrepreneur, you have to understand that the technology is moving so fast. You have to be able to position your company to win from the technology getting better and not lose from the technology getting better. So let's say you're building an AI copywriting tool. A 10 times smarter model will not necessarily write copy that's 10 times smarter. In fact, it may write dumber copy. If you have Albert Einstein writing your copy, you probably do a worse job.
Totally. Right.
Than a real good copywriter.
Mm-hmm.
But the models are only getting smarter, but cheaper and faster. And that means the unit cost of intelligence is going to go down exponentially. And how do you position your product in a way that actually gains from it as opposed to not gain from it? Because it's inevitable. It's going to happen. I don't think the market is still priced in Blackwell and the NVIDIA Blackwell and the models trained on Blackwell. It's the models that will get trained on the Blackwell and GPUs and run inference on Blackwell GPUs. It will be way smarter, way cheaper, way faster. And I don't know how much smarter. I just know they're going to be smarter. And I can't tell you how much smarter because it's just hard to articulate how smarter they're going to be. You just have to kind of plan for it. But what has changed as an entrepreneur is you want to gain from that advancement. So with Julius, as the models get smarter, the ability to write code and make mistakes and make fewer mistakes goes up. You can write code much more efficiently. You can make fewer mistakes in the code. You can actually write code for much more complex tasks than before. There's a feature where you could just write a prompt and build a full stack application that actually is useful and not just a nice demo. Maybe that's just the next generation of models. And you want to position your company in a way that stands to gain from it. So I think that's something that has changed as an entrepreneur. Because I remember, purely SaaS days, you're building payroll software, you're building task management software. The gains you're going to get are purely from your ability to figure out a problem and market a solution and build a brand. But now you also stand to gain from the technology itself getting better. I think it was the last time this happened was, early web, where, Netflix launched with just CDs. But in 1999, it wasn't possible to stream movies on your home computer, but, in a decade, it became possible. And then the technology was kind of stagnant after iPhone came out for a decade, and all you could build was just software that you could build a few years ago.
Yeah. Does it change the way entrepreneurs build in terms of there's this idea that people keep floating around of the one person, 10 billion, $1 billion startup, the 10 person, $100 million revenue startup.
Yeah.
Does it change how you think about building the company in a kind of post-AI world?
I think so. Yeah. I think individuals in a company can do more. The individual contributors can work more efficiently. I've noticed this in my own role, like writing code is much easier, synthesizing information is much easier, getting insights from our data is much easier. I think it is. I think a one-person billion-dollar company is not inevitable. There's two ways, you know. One is you have like hyperinflation in just and $1 billion
There you
companies
go.
a month.
Exactly. Look, I could give you $1 today and say I'm valuing Julius at $1 billion. Don't hire anybody else. Go fire everybody.
Yeah, I love
There's
that.
plenty of ways to do that.
Yeah, but the
Is there like a tool chain stack that people who have that vision are kind of building with to enable that? I don't know. Is there anything tactical for anybody on that front?
Yeah, you definitely should be using all the, if you're writing code, building software, use the coding tools. Cursor, Windsurf by Codium, those tools are going to make you very productive when you write code. If you're dealing with any kind of data and getting insights from data, you should use Julius. I got to plug.
What is this thing? What is this Julius thing? Yeah.
You're, in finance, sales, marketing, all kinds of roles, you deal with data, you want to get insights from it, you should be using Julius. I think Zapier is great for, automations, especially automations with AI. So if you get like a marketing lead or sales lead, you want to do some kind of sorting on it, have an AI model look through it and categorize the lead. All those things that would take an individual a part-time job. Part-time of their job is just like sorting through leads. Now the AI can help there. So there's pockets where AI can make you very productive today. I think, in the next generation of models, you will have agents that truly work. And when that happens, you will start to see more autonomous employees. You could have an employee that does accounts payable for you. And you have this like really long context AI agent that just builds up knowledge over time. You can give it feedback like, hey, you did this bill wrong, but just know that next time you get a bill from our landlord, first run it by me instead of paying it directly. Today you can't do that with the AI model because every time you use it, it's like brand new, it's fresh, it doesn't remember anything. But with a sufficiently long enough context, you will be able to build up that context the way you do with an employee, giving them feedback and giving them responses. So I think that's going to happen. I think agents will be cracked in a year or so.
You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Breaking news.
Yeah.
Is there anything else on that front to talk about that you think is interesting, maybe overhyped, underhyped in terms of kind of AI's impact on maybe like the cash efficiency of startups or I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the fastest depreciating assets in AI right now are the models themselves. You spend $1 billion training a model, and within months it's obsolete. There's a better model out there by someone else. Your model is like, nah, it's kind of obsolete. And it's kind of fascinating that these models, they have like such a high, is CapEx? Right?
Yes.
There you go. Entrepreneur. But
Look at you with your. I love that.
I'm an engineer.
There you go. Exactly.
Doing CapEx and OpEx, but super high CapEx, and within months it's obsolete.
No, but it's interesting because this goes to something we talked about before, which was like high status versus low status startups. And like the high CapEx translates to high status in many respects.
I think so. I was just talking about this with a friend, founder of Readwise, Tristan. And I was telling him, one of the lowest status things you can do in San Francisco today is build a GPT wrapper. People talk about GPT wrapper as like a derogatory term. Like, oh, you're just a GPT wrapper. You aren't training your own models. You go to a party and people ask you, what do you do? And you tell them, I'm building AI products. And they ask you, are you training your own model or are you just a GPT wrapper?
Just a GPT wrapper.
And there's a lot of people that are raising money to train their own models. as I said, the models are so rapidly depreciating. Like within months within months or weeks, your model's like obsolete. So what's going to happen is that there's going to be very few companies that will have great models, but they won't have the ability to build products on top of those models. So the opportunity is building products on top of those models, right? Why should you stick to your own models? Like if someone else has a better model, why not use that model?
Yep. Why don't investors like that? It seems like that's kind of the tail wagging the dog, that entrepreneurs, maybe it's even obvious to them,
Yeah.
but may not be as defensible or as fundable
Yeah.
as...
Yeah, I think investors think put a lot of emphasis on moat. And I think startups don't have a moat. A moat is a defensive position. You can't be attacked. But startups are all about offense. You can't come out of the door playing defense. You have to come out of the door playing offense. You start with like zero moat, right? Nat Friedman told me this the week before we launched Julius. He told me, you have no moat. What matters is your ability to land on a beachhead, and your Napoleonic ability to expand from there and capture everything. You don't start by playing defense, you start by playing offense. And so startups by default have no moat. You look at Stripe, like PayPal could have done what they were doing. You look at Microsoft, and IBM could have done what they were doing. They had all the resources. They had all the programmers. They had all the brand, everything. So the startups by default have them. I think I wish investors understood that.
Wouldn't that be great?
That would be great.
How do you think about investors? Because like I said, one thing that stands out to me in the companies that you really admire is most of them have been cash flow positive for a while, even though they've, regardless of how much money they've chosen to raise, most of them have not had to do that. So it's given them license that, when you're a cash burning startup, you might not feel like you have that kind of optionality.
Yeah. I think more so than optionality, I think what matters is finding the right people and listening to the right people when you're building a company. There's so much more to building a company than raising money. And
that's heresy around here.
There's so much more to building a company than raising money. You could have all the money you want, and you still have to go figure out what the users want.
Well, you sent me some note that was along these lines. Like, every once in a while, I feel like when I get stressed out, I feel like I should raise more money, and yet I know that's actually not the answer.
Yeah. That's not the answer.
That's my ego talking, or that's my FOMO talking, or there's something else that's going on.
Yeah.
But I feel like you specifically, there's some journey you're on to kind of square your relationship with all that.
Yeah. Well, basically, startups are hard, and you want quick wins. You want quick wins from somewhere, and if you can either do the hard thing, which is solve the problem in front of you, or you could do the thing that is less hard, is raise money or announce a fundraise and feel so satisfied that there we go, we raised so much money, like
right.
we're winning. But are you really winning? Like, are you solving the problems that people want solved? And do your customers love you? Do your users love you? Do your users use the product? Do your users pay for your product? All these different things really matter. And so would you rather do those things, or would you get your dopamine from, validation from other people in San Francisco?
Do you feel like a crazy person for talking about customers as much as you do, and customer love the way that you do? Because I feel like generally it feels like a lot of companies have lost the plot, that's kind of the point.
Yeah, I think so. But I look up to people like Ivan and Kari.
Yeah.
There's one who is kind of unpopular when it comes to that, is Bill from Microsoft. I would even argue that Microsoft is probably, you could consider Microsoft as a bootstrap company.
Oh, one round, that's it.
One round.
Yep.
And raising money is good. It's not necessarily bad. There's so much more to building a great company and a great business than just raising money. And it also depends on where you choose to spend your time as a founder. Are you always thinking about money, or are you always thinking about what is the most important problem for me to solve to make my company a success? It could mean making a key hire. It could mean figuring a thing out about the product, or figuring something out about distribution, or figuring something out about positioning, about marketing. There's all these different problems to solve, and you should be surrounding yourself and like soaking yourself in those problems, as opposed to, hey, how can I like hit the metric for the next round?
You mentioned burn rate earlier. How do you think about burn rate for Julius? Like, do you think about like because you haven't raised a lot of money, right?
Yeah,
Maybe you've raised more since we last talked.
we raised some more than we last talked, but
Okay.
it was at like, this is not.
No, we'll let it. Yeah,
The way thing about burn rate is,
because up to that point you were running close to profitable. No,
yeah, we were very close to that.
that's what I thought.
Bumped up our burn because we realized that we wanted to improve our infrastructure, invest in like really good infrastructure. It's going to pay dividends long term.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things about having money is it allows you to think more long term, as opposed to like, hey, I want to be profitable next month.
Yeah, and you're cutting corners and you're doing everything.
And
When you invest in your infrastructure, what does that look like?
so we run over 2 million lines of AI generated code every day.
Wow.
And that's written by Julius.
Yeah.
And that code runs in code sandboxes that we host. So we're basically spinning up these computers in the cloud where the AI can write and run code and manipulate files and analyze data. And that millions of lines of code runs in these sandboxes. So we run the infrastructure for that. And there's a lot to do there with how quickly can you spin up these sandboxes? How can you make the code experience, like code run really, really fast? How can you add more CPUs, more RAM to these cloud computers? All that leads to a better product experience and our users.
And this is hosted infrastructure that you're not like going out and buying your own servers, you're not buying your own okay.
Yeah, hosted infrastructure.
Yeah.
And then there's this whole thing about security. You're dealing with a lot of sensitive user data. How do you secure it? How do you encrypt it? How do you secure the code execution so that, you know, even if somebody can prompt the AI to run nefarious code, you're kind of like sandboxing the whole thing.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, we invest a lot in that. So I think like having some money helps you with the optionality.
Were you feeling that going into that most recent raise? Like, were you feeling the constraints of like short-term trade-offs?
No, we haven't spent the money we raised in 2022 when I first raised for the first idea.
Now you're sounding like Kari.
Yeah. We're still on that.
Oh, so this is actually the first time you've raised for Julius proper.
No, I
Okay.
raised a little bit in February.
You did, okay.
And then opportunistically.
Yeah.
And then I was offered some money, so I raised a little more.
So you're micro-dosing capital.
Yeah, I just like keep raising the valuation every time.
Why not just go big and raise a huge round?
I'm not opposed to it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it. But I think the bottleneck is like I want to find really good engineers. And like that's what I want to spend my time and energy on, is finding great people to build the products.
Yeah.
We have the money, so.
Sounds like it. Yeah. Okay, how do you solve that problem? How do you find these great, what makes a good engineer for this kind of business?
A good engineer is someone who has a lot of taste in the products they build. They think beyond the code. They think about the user. They put themselves in the shoes of the user. They think about different ways you could solve a problem. Not, hey, here's a solution and I need a problem that solves the solution. So there's a lot of taste that a great engineer has.
Is that different than places you've worked in the past? Have you worked with engineers who reverse that?
Yeah, 100%. You know, I've worked at companies like Uber and Facebook. I think Uber had a lot of that culture.
Oh, fascinating. Okay.
Yeah, Uber is very different than the stories I've heard from the old Uber, where you try to like crush Lyft. And
You were not there for those days.
I was not there, no.
How long did you last?
A year and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good experience?
I was spending a lot of my time building applications on the side because my idea was I'm gonna build things, like things that I want in my life. I listen to a lot of podcasts, so I want an app that has comments for podcasts, podcastcomments.com.
Right.
And you can just, no matter what podcast app you use, you can just like open the comments for a given podcast and see a comment section. And probably a dumb idea, probably like 5 people want it, but I built it, I launched it, got no users. And I was kind of like spending all my nights and weekends building these things, hoping that one of them would work. And then I would go all in and start a company. Eventually I got frustrated and just like quit my job anyway. And when I quit my job, I realized that the reason that the ideas weren't working because I wasn't all in on them. I wasn't thinking about them 24/7. I wasn't fully immersed in the ideas that I'm building. And the moment I kind of went all in and I fully immersed myself in the ideas and the problems, I realized it's just a completely different sport. You're kind of like going from minor league baseball to major league baseball.
Right.
You know, it's real. It's real.
You said something earlier about a company is as much about the rules you follow as the rules you break.
I think even more so about the rules you break.
I think that's exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Which rules have you found most valuable to break?
2 rules. One is people always told us, hey, you have to go B2B. You have to be sales led. You need to have a sales force. You need to have a sales team that is doing demos about your product, and then they're like tracking leads in a CRM, and you're like, you have an AE who is like closing those deals, and then you have like a CSM who is managing those relationships with customers. And it always occurred to me that is a little odd. Like you're adding, especially in the early days, you're adding so many layers between you and the person who is using your thing, and you're complicating the whole thing way too much. If you're building something that's actually useful for them, and you can make it easy to use and easy to try, we're very product led. Where you come to Julius, you make an account, you try the thing. If it's useful, you invite your teammates, you create workflows, you share with them, you share threads, you share insights, all that. And it's very, very straightforward.
And is it fairly horizontal? Like, are people coming from all over the place to do all sorts of things? Or did you find a beachhead in kind of one market use case?
There's a few different buckets. Well, the general theme is it's knowledge workers who have data on their hands and they want to analyze and they want to get insights from that data. And that's where Julius helps them.
And what were they using before?
A variety of things. Some of them would go to a data analyst and, wait for the analyst to come back with a report. Some of them would use Excel and like try to do some analysis in Excel.
Yeah.
Some of them would whip up a Jupyter notebook and ask ChatGPT to help them with some Python code, code up an analysis. Some of them had established teams that had dashboards and BI tools set up. So they were purely consuming by looking at the things that are set up for them. So these were the few different buckets. This includes people in finance, sales, marketing, operations, even scientific research and education. We have a top 3 business school in the US, I guess in the world, that's going to be teaching a class on how to do analysis with AI using Julius next semester.
Let's go.
Yeah, it's 1,000 people student class.
Amazing.
And all these people, they're entrepreneurs, they're executives, they're people with finance background, sales marketing background, operations. All these people will...
Who needs a sales team when you've got a professor out there training thousands of potential Julius users, right?
Yeah, and they're all paid users. We've seen a lot of professors in business schools realize like, oh, these people need to learn how to do analysis. How do we empower them to do the analysis? Well, teach them Julius. Soon we're going to launch Julius certifications. So you get certified in doing analysis using Julius without having to learn like a line of code.
Yeah. You literally looked right in the camera to say that. That was your infomercial right there. You too can get certified in Julius.
You too can get certified in Julius. Let's do it.
Let's go.
Yeah.
That's interesting though, because it echoes my conversation with Kari too, where, they had a very small sales team. I mean, I think until recently it was like 2 people.
Yeah.
And very little outbound marketing. Almost no outbound marketing. In fact, if you looked at kind of their the way they kind of promoted and positioned their company, that was like a point of pride for them, how little they spent on marketing. And in the conversation, he said over and over again, like, people kept telling me this is going to tap out. And now he's in the tens of millions of revenue and, still finding that to be the case.
Yeah.
So that's interesting that you two are finding that the whole big sales org is actually either overkill, over complexity, or just completely unwarranted at this point.
Yeah, 100%.
Or at least for you and the way you want to build Julius.
Yeah. And I think if there's somebody watching this, you should build your company the way you want to build it and not the way I tell you to build it, right? So if you want to have a company that's like 90% sales force, like if you want to build the next DocuSign, you should do it. But just know that it's your company.
Let me get this straight. Are you telling them to build in founder mode? Is that what you're telling everybody?
I'm
Look directly into that camera and say, founder mode.
founder mode. You have to do it. You have to do it. If you do it right, you most likely.
Have you tried not doing it that way? And if so, how did it feel?
Not doing what way?
Just not being authentic to you, like trying to follow the rules, trying to do what everybody was telling you to do.
Yes, so many times. Yeah, if you're not being yourself, like, you end up being bad version of someone else. Might as well be a great version of yourself than be a bad version of someone else.
Why do you think so many people struggle with that? Because that's come up a lot recently. Obviously, founder mode, the essay prompted a lot of it, but it feels like it's coming up more and more in conversations with people. And there's a real tension there, though, with being true to yourself, but then in such a funding-driven environment. Like, what if you're doing something that's out there enough that it makes your lawyers uncomfortable, your VCs uncomfortable? What if that puts you in a position to not be able to raise that next round? Because you don't look like you're out of central casting. You don't look like you are, you've gone through the manufacturing line to kind of match against all the patterns that are already established.
I think, look, you have to take risks.
Dude, yeah, you do.
Startups are all about risk.
They are all about risk.
So if you're trying to minimize risk, you probably are in the wrong sport.
Do you think there's a lot of people in the wrong sport right now, though? Do you think there's a lot of people like playing entrepreneur, playing founder?
I think so. I mean, I think there's some merit to playing founder because you kind of like start by faking it, and then eventually you realize like you kind of like grow into the thing, and you fake it till you make it. One of the things I was really uncomfortable with in the beginning was the CEO title. We were
you personally.
I was like, we were a one-person company. I'm not a CEO of anything. It's just me. Eventually, like, you end up like embracing the thing. You call yourself the CEO enough times, and you realize like, all right, I'm the CEO, I guess. You start with like a little bit of role play, and then like grow into it. But I think it's important to be true to yourself. Like, if you got one life, you have one shot. Like time is money. Your time is really valuable.
I thought you were going to start rapping an Eminem song. Yo.
If you're not being real to yourself, like, what are you doing?
Okay, so you had two rules to break. One was, the first one you said was sales. What was the other one?
It was, hey, you have hit this certain metric. You should raise more money. I see why startups raise more money at a certain metric, but I'm not sure why somebody should do it purely because they hit a metric. You should do it if you want to, not because you hit a certain metric.
Okay. Do you think AI native startups will think about funding differently than pre-AI startups?
Yeah. Well, if you're AI native startup, you probably run your company more efficiently than pre-AI companies because you're using AI everywhere.
Yeah.
So you're much leaner. Because you're much leaner by default, you have more optionality.
How's San Francisco changed?
Since AI? Since like the last couple of years?
Yeah.
I think...
And you've been here how long now?
I've been here 4 years.
Okay. Yeah.
I've been here 4 years. I was here for a little bit for internships back in college, pre-COVID. And I actually like the energy much more now because I think towards like late 2010s, San Francisco was full of business types people who are super careerists, and not the image of San Francisco I had heard about before I got here for those internships. And just like people building cool things and trying things. And I think a lot of those people left in COVID, and they, went to New York or
Utah. A lot of them came to Utah. A lot of them came to Utah.
That's crazy. I think a lot of people left San Francisco in COVID.
Yeah.
And the kind of people that were left behind are the people that have the ethos. You build things, you try things. You build things sometimes for the sake of building a thing.
Is that happening more? Like just the tinkering in general?
I think so.
Okay.
I think a lot of tinkering is happening.
What kinds of stuff? Has that changed? Like what are people messing around with here?
The things you tinker with change. You have, of course, like all these AI models to tinker with and build cool things with. And that blows open this whole new field of opportunities and things you can build. One of my friends, he shout out to Riley Waltz, by the way. He's
Riley
the goat.
Waltz.
He's the goat. He went on YouTube and he found all the he used certain keywords, like regexes to find super early YouTube videos, 2006 era. He made this feed of what was life back then, and it's just it's like watching a documentary. It's just it's random people's YouTube videos from back in the day, and you're just getting a snapshot of what life was like. It's like a stream of videos. It's so good. It's just amazing that he built that. It's really cool. He's done a bunch of shout out to Riley. He's done a bunch of other cool stuff.
Who else do you want to shout out?
Shout out to the Julius team.
Shout out to the Julius team.
Yeah.
We can keep grinding in the office while this guy's over here just chatting it up.
Can't do it without you guys.
Can't do it without you guys. Where will Rahul be in the next 5 years?
IPO.
You think so?
I want an IPO. Yeah.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Isn't that like an outdated? That feels like a Web 2.0 concept. IPOing.
Why not?
You're just going to sell secondaries for the rest of your life. Why deal with the headache of being a public company? You can have all the free money you want, liquidity where you need it, when you need it.
I want to make Julius one of the biggest companies in the world. The biggest companies in the world are public companies. If you want to go that big, might as well.
When did that take root as an aspiration? Because that's a very ambitious statement for something that was born out of the sixth pivot.
I think the size of the opportunity that we have been after is massive. AI writing code for everyone.
But here's the thing, Rahul.
Yeah.
ChatGPT is just going to kill you.
Yeah.
Claude's just going to kill you. All the it's all just going to be native to these big platforms anyway. So why don't you just hang it up?
I love it. Look, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, right? It doesn't kill you. It's great because all the popular AI models at some point in time copied features from Julius or tried to build Julius clones. And every time they've launched those, we only get bigger because what they do is they do a poor job of implementing those things. But they do this big marketing push. So they go out and educate the market that AI can be used for analysis. And the users go try it and they realize that this thing kind of sucks. But then they go find, okay, what's the AI tool that does this well? And they come across Julius and they use Julius and they become Julius users. So every time a big company tries to kill us, it actually is great because they do all this free marketing and free market education for us. And then they send all those users to us because when you look up AI data analysis, the first result is Julius.
All right, this is great. I think we're set.
Yeah. Picture,
Let's
do
please. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
You got a minute for so we have two ideas. One, a portrait. So you sit right here. I think I'm going to pop up here.
Yeah.
That's good. And then I want us to do one in the photo booth since it's just right there.
A photo booth would be amazing.
Come on, right? We have to do that.